brain tumor caused a man to gain 20 kgs in 6 months.
So one patient was just beginning to eat more and more, and his wife was wondering what the hell is going on. It was a tumor called a craniopharyngioma, which is a difficult tumor to remove. But we removed it in a beautiful fashion, and he lost all his weight back within another 6 months. The awe and wonder that comes with every single case is out of this world. When you go a few millimeters into that, you've paralyzed a guy for life. So the brain feels no pain. You can operate on patients while they're awake.
What?
Yeah. So if you get a person to talk to you while you're operating on their brain and they're using speech, they're using their tongue, you can see like the brain almost blushing because that part is recruited. It requires a little more vascular supply, and you can see the rest of the brain being pale. So it's a physical phenomenon which is mind-blowing. A lot of people say I'm absolutely fine with 4 to 5 hours of sleep. But I think they're almost always wrong. It's the exact same thing that alcohol does. It lowers your perception of impairment. So the thing that is telling you that you're not okay itself is not okay. The thing about the brain is that it's very resilient. So it doesn't rebel immediately. It sustains impact, remains quiet, and then one fine day it gives way. I have seen several teenagers with disc prolapses because of them just simply being in bed on their phone all the time. Imagine you have your head roughly weighs about 4-5 kilos. And then you put it at an incline of let's say 20-30 degrees. That's equivalent to a 35-40 kilo weight on your head. 27-year-old guy with a tumor inside his spinal cord.
Right.
He was a time bomb. He would get worse. We went in for surgery. The anesthetist said, listen, just abandon the operation. We went ahead and asked the relatives. They said that, why are you asking us? You're the doctor. You should decide. You have to be able to take a decision at the spur of the moment. And nonetheless, we went ahead and opened up the spine. We didn't get any signals. We removed the tumor beautifully. What do you think happened to him after the operation? He was completely paralyzed. With zero movement, in a wheelchair, had come in more or less walking. Sometimes you pick up a fight and you lose. I didn't give up, and 3 months later he sent me a video of him having
What? Today on my show I have Dr. Mazda Turel, one of India's leading neurosurgeons. The brain determines who you are. Every decision, every memory, every version of yourself. And yet it's the organ we understand the least and abuse the most. Dr. Mazda has spent his career literally going inside our brains, and the stories he's brought back are extraordinary. What he's witnessed in that operating theatre, the recoveries that defied logic, the losses that stayed with him, will make you see your own brain differently. Watch this till the end. Let's just pause for a moment. Now, some people like quick answers, while some people like to think deeply. If you're in the second group, the secret sauce is made for you. So please hit subscribe. I was reading your book last night, and it's really gripping because, you talk about all these cases that you've had from children to older people. It's an insane thing because we take our brain for granted. You're the man who goes and drills, like you say in your book. I had to drill a neat little hole at the back here and, move out these little different colored pink things and all. And find that tumor which was pushing on the, optic nerve or whatever nerve and therefore causing the guy to go blind. And you pluck out or peel out or scrape out. These are your words.
A lot of people think that, just because neurosurgeons do this on a daily basis, it's just part of an assembly line. But I think the awe and wonder that comes with every single case is out of this world.
How many operations do you do a day?
On an average, about 1.5.
Got it.
But anywhere between
I feel bad for that half person. No, these are statistics, yes.
But anywhere between 1 to 2. Because our surgeries, brain surgeries are a little longer.
Yeah.
Depends on what you're doing. On an average, they take about 4 to 6 hours from opening to close.
When you say opening to close,
it's right from the time you go into the theatre, you position a patient, fix the head on a pin, clean the patient. You have to clean the head nicely, disinfect it, scrub the patient, drape,
Shave the head.
shave the head. Everybody wants a different. Some people want their head completely shaved. Some people are very particular about how the head is going to look.
Yes.
They're not bothered about what we are doing inside.
Yes.
But baal theek hona chahiye. And the most common question that people ask after brain tumor surgery is, when can I color my hair?
Right.
So, but having said that, there's an entire process. It's almost like a meditation that you go through in a very beautiful way. So once the patient is positioned, cleaned, then we drape the patient. It's almost like a ritual done with...
Draping is what?
Draping is covering all the patient to make them sterile from rest of the environment. So everything you put on them are sterile drapes so that you can put your instruments on top and nothing else from the external world makes contact.
So you put your instruments on top of their stomach or back, for
No,
example?
we have slightly ergonomically designed pouches in which we place them. We don't just use the body as a support system.
Right.
There's a great deal of respect that comes with dealing with human beings, because you have to understand they're all under general anesthesia. They have no control over themselves. They have surrendered their lives to you. While on a serious note, this is the serious part of, but there's always a fun side to everything that we do. I usually operate with my AirPods on, not to listen to music, but just in case I need to take a call that requires some kind of quick response. So once I finished draping and positioning the patient, I went to scrub and I realized one AirPod was missing. So I de-scrubbed and I said, oh shit, I need to find it because these are expensive things. And I searched all around on the floor to see if there's anything. And luckily Apple has a find your AirPod thing. So I put it on for it to beep. And it kept taking me closer to the patient, and it was lodged in the butt crack of the patient.
What?
For some elusive way. I don't know how the hell it got there.
The patient lying on its back.
Yeah.
On his stomach.
His patient was lying sideways.
Oh, okay.
So I was positioning the hip or something, I would have fallen. And then it was lodged. The funny part was that the phone kept taking me to like...
And your mind must have gone wherever it was.
So, imagine that.
Wrong leg amputated.
And if it had an alarm attached to it, that fellow would be thinking of the doctor every day at a certain time. Yes. So no, besides the few fun stuff that happens, it's a very spiritual process of getting a patient ready for an operation, and nobody really takes it for granted.
What is the mind space of your patients? Because I would be shitting bricks.
Yeah, it's always a spectrum, right? Some people are very nervous. They want to hold your hand. They want to see your face. They want to make sure that you're around. Some people are chill. They'll tell you, doc, don't worry. You've got this. That kind of thing. So it just depends on their personality, some people want to crack jokes. Some people crack really bad jokes just to get the anxiety out.
I think I'll be that person, yes.
But we have a beautiful operation theatre. We have a wallpaper that looks like we are operating on a beach in Goa.
Right.
And another operation theatre has the Swiss Alps. Some have the desert. So it's very, very soothing to the nervous system.
Because I've been in an operating theatre as a patient for a small thing, but yes, and I won't forget.
It can be unnerving. I've been operated myself too.
When you're wheeled in.
Yeah, and when you're just looking at the ceiling.
Yeah, and you say bye-bye to everyone. You're like, okay, I'm gone now.
Yeah.
But luckily then the anesthesia hits you.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm thinking of it now. It's pretty serious. So, Dr. Mazda Turel, I just want to ask this question, which is for someone watching who doesn't know you, what do you do?
That's very many people. I'm a neurosurgeon. Neurosurgeon operates on the brain and the spine and the peripheral nervous system. Think brain tumors, vascular problems of the brain like aneurysms, arteriovenous malformations, trauma to the head. spinal problems, degenerative spinal problems, neck pain, back pain, herniated discs, spinal tumors, spinal infections, pain syndromes, craniofacial pain syndromes, back pain, neck pain syndromes, all of those things. Anything to do with the brain, spine, and nerve.
Fun stuff.
Fun stuff. And it's quite vast and it's quite extensive, and every day presents with it a different challenge or a different nuance. It's not like doing, with no disrespect to the orthopedic guys, doing a knee replacement surgery.
Ooh, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt. Wait till you have to get your knee replaced.
Oops, it
The
doesn't.
doctor's gonna be like, I saw this podcast. Yes, you may
I have
feel
very dear knee replacement surgeons, and I always tell them that,
What are you doing, bro?
They do like 5 a day.
Yeah. There's so many types of doctors who do like 6-7 surgeries a day or whatever.
Yeah, urologists, they're just like, for lack of a better word, dicking around.
So how did you end up in this cerebral space?
I liked becoming a doctor.
Is your family doctor?
My dad's a neurosurgeon as well.
Oh yeah. Oh.
So
okay.
the influence obviously came from there. Dinner table conversations, just exposure to surgery. From a very young age, I used to go to the operation theatre on weekends and watch him operate. And I thought it was fun. And then when I got into medicine, I really liked neurology as a subject because it's very analytical. It helps you decipher things in a systematic way. And I've always liked doing stuff with my hands. No pun intended. But I've always, to be able to work with your hands, I think is a gift.
Well, you're in the top thing, so it's fine.
I mean, we like to believe so. I tell my
like you just
other
said,
colleagues,
knee surgeons.
Yeah.
Who cares?
The only function of the rest of the body is to carry the brain around.
Yes.
So
On a level, and the heart. Keep it pumping. Okay. Well, I just want to get a little bit deeper into the brain.
yeah,
And you have spoken about this before, where there's so many different constituent parts of the brain responsible for different things. So I just wanted to understand from you, because you look at it on a very physical level.
yes. So when you look at the brain, it's this beautiful jelly-like structure, more like a custardy appearance to it.
Like yellow?
It's pinkish, beigeish, a little yellowish, a little off-white. It's not grey like most people imagine it to be, because we keep saying grey matter.
Yes.
It's not grey. It's got this beautiful, and it's glistening because it's bathed in cerebrospinal fluid. So it's a little shiny and it's
Moist, always
and it's
moist.
yeah. And it's pulsating.
You can see the pulsing?
You can see it pulsate with every heartbeat.
Wow. It's
Visually, yeah. So you're operating on a pulsating brain. It gently pulsates beat by beat. And when you're working with it, you're working on something that's constantly moving. So it's actually working on an alive structure. It's not a fixed organ. And that's why robotics will take really long to be able to master what the human hand can still do. But there are areas of the brain that are mapped out. So there are areas for speech. There are areas for hand and leg function. So the frontal lobe, there are areas for planning, judgment, what gives you your personality. The temporal lobe has areas for language and music. The parietal lobe gives you your spatial understanding of where you are in the world. So easily in the middle of the night, we get up and just switch on a light without knowing where it is. But this is what tells you that it needs to function properly. The cerebellum, which is the small part of the brain, allows you coordination, balance. And then there are all these 12 pairs of cranial nerves that control smell, vision, hearing, taste, movement, jaw, facial sensations. And then the vagus nerve that goes down into the gut and controls all of that. So it's this amazing, mysterious...
Multi-level.
It's so layered structurally and functionally that I don't know how nature came up with such an organ system that will take several more millennia to decode. 100 billion neurons in the brain. I mean, don't ask me who counted them, but 100 million,
Or how?
100 million neurons.
Billion.
100 billion. Connected to one another, forming close to 300 billion synapses. And the interaction of each of these connections is eventually making us who we are as human beings.
And this kind of peaks when you're a young child or something. I heard something. No,
So when you're a young kid, is the age of massive development.
Yes.
So the volume of the brain exponentially increases, right? Like even the head circumference. You're born with a head circumference of about 35 centimeters. In the first 3 months, it increases by 2 centimeters a month. And then increases by 1 centimeter a month, and then by 0.5. But the brain's increase. So at that age, it's all about volume. It's all about recruiting more stuff. And then when you get into your adolescent age or in your early 20s, it starts pruning the neurons that are not functional, that are not really required,
Right.
depending on your external environment and your external influences. And that's when you begin to develop things like insight, judgment, planning, how you build on your memory, all of those things. So in the 20s, I think more than expansion, it focuses on optimization, and it peaks in the 30s. And then stuff like pattern recognition, etc., peaks in the 40s.
Oh.
And then slowly, with the environmental exposure, with all the other things that affect brain function, there seems to be a plateau, and then eventually some form of a decline.
So plateau is at like 50s.
Plateau is like at 50s. But you can still enhance cognition by constantly doing stuff, like learning a new hobby or learning a new skill. So you're able to still recruit. Once upon a time, it was thought that neurons don't regenerate. But now we have data to tell us that there is something called as neurogenesis. Neuro means neurons and genesis means production. You're still able to go ahead and produce new neurons even after they're damaged. And that's the whole basis of neuroplasticity in the brain.
Got it. Is it true that, you keep hearing that we only use 10% of our brain or something like that?
Some people use much less than that.
That's true.
I think that's one of the commonest myths in neuroscience that we use. You have to understand.
There's so much power waiting to be
Yeah, I mean,
unlocked.
it's the most energy expensive organ of the body. Let me give you it weighs about 2% of the body weight, roughly. But it consumes about 20% of the body's oxygen consumption.
Oh.
It uses energy as a fuel, as a resource. So I don't think evolution would permit so much redundancy. So while we may not use the entire brain at all at once, we definitely use several parts of it for several different tasks.
Right.
Like, let's say I'm having a cup of chai. There's too many things going on. The thought of me having the chai, me signaling to my hand that it needs to grab the cup coming to my mouth, me savoring the taste of the chai. So there are several networks and connections that get.
And you don't need to use 100% of your brain on the other side to have a
particular.
chai.
But through the day, you will, if you're
Use different
relatively
parts.
active,
Yes,
doing
yes.
productive work, you will use different. Imagine, if you say that you use only 10% of your brain, if you knocked off 90%, you would not be less effective. You would be comatose. So you actually see when you're operating on the brain and you're doing an awake operation. Sometimes you can operate on patients while they're awake.
What?
Yeah. You can operate on certain... So the brain feels no pain. Like if I do a craniotomy, means open your head and do tuck, tuck, tuck on your brain, it doesn't feel any pain.
But my head will hurt.
But we can numb that with local anesthesia.
But it'll hurt like hell afterwards.
It won't hurt.
It won't hurt.
It won't
But
hurt.
you've just opened my skull.
99% of patients, or let's say 95% of patients after a craniotomy, which is opening of the skull and putting it back and doing an operation, they don't complain of headache. Yeah.
They don't have to take painkillers.
We give them paracetamol.
So only it's a very low level painkiller.
Yeah, nothing fancy.
I thought after
spine surgery patients, on the other hand, are in excruciating pain, at least for a few hours after surgery.
But
But
you were saying, sorry.
brain surgery is painless. So I was saying that we were talking about how certain parts recruit certain function, right? You can actually physically see that. So if you get a person to talk to you while you're operating on their brain and they're using speech, they're using their tongue, you can see the vascularity increase on the surface of the brain in those areas. You can see like the brain almost blushing. Because that part is recruited, it requires a little more vascular supply. And you can see the rest of the brain being pale and that part recruiting blood supply. So it's a physical phenomenon which is mind-blowing. I mean, for those who find it interesting, now someone looking, so what the hell?
Your friends, the knee surgeons will be like,
surgeons will say, oh, just bloody cut.
Mazda's showing off again. But 1 second, doc.
But oftentimes the knee surgeons come to my theatre and they're just looking at the monitor like this for 15 minutes. And I'm hoping they're wondering, what the hell am I doing with my life? Yeah. But
you don't look at their monitors. I've seen monitors of knee surgeries and just like in a tunnel and there's like darkness and some things are flowing past
they're
you.
all wearing these massive helmets. It looks like they're in space. But I have very dear knee surgeon friends, and that is why I can diss them publicly.
Hopefully they won't watch this.
I hold them in the highest regard.
But you just said something about awake brain surgery. So what is awake brain surgery?
Awake brain surgery, actually, it's not a novel concept. It's been done for 30, 40 years now. And when there are certain brain tumors in areas of the brain that are responsible for eloquence. Eloquence means speech, language function, hand and leg motor function. And you want to make sure that you're not damaging a certain area of the brain or not damaging the function while removing the tumor. Someone has a brain tumor in the speech area, the speech output area.
So basically...
But his speech is absolutely okay.
Okay.
He's come with, let's say, a seizure or some headache. But this is the speech area and this is your tumor.
Right.
Okay. It's pushed the speech area behind. Now, if I go in without the patient being awake, I'm going to go remove tumor. I'm not sure how much of the speech, because they are...
It's all touching. It's all touching. It's all small areas.
It's all touching.
How big is this area? You've done this, but how big?
I mean, it can be any size, depending. The area per se may be roughly in a volume of, let's say, 2 or 3 cc.
So like this big?
Yeah, like a peanut.
But then why do I have to talk?
Because you want to know what is happening to function.
Right.
Structure and function are two independent things, but they work together. So you may be able to preserve structure, but you don't know if you're actually manhandling function. You'll start stuttering or you'll start repeating stuff.
You will see me stuttering?
Yes. I will see you stuttering. I will see you repeat. I will see you slurring. I will see you stop talking.
But then suppose you've already removed a part
so that's a warning sign. So then you stop, you change your trajectory, you see what's happening, you give it some time, increase the blood pressure, wait for 10 minutes, see if sometimes it can just be because of traction. Brain is very delicate, it's very sensitive. So even just a little prod can cause it to become violent and become aggressive. So, and then you leave it alone for a bit and you talk to him, he'll again talk back to you. It's better than not knowing how much more you remove. So if you've removed or damaged too many connections, then it may not even come back.
At least you have something there.
So this is like a soldier telling you that, hey boss, this is how much I'm willing to tolerate. So a few days later, it can even come back.
Got it.
But again, it varies from patient to patient. If you've really done, or if the tumor itself is malignant and you sometimes know that you will have to sacrifice something to survive, then you have to have that discussion with the patient and the family. And explain. You go down that road and then there are tracks that control hand and leg function. So if there's a tumor abutting that and you go a few millimeters into that, you've paralyzed a guy for life.
So that is the level of precision needed in a brain surgery.
Yes.
God.
It's extremely taxing, and it's extremely, they've hooked surgeons to monitors when they're doing surgery that's high end, and you see blood pressure, heart rate of the surgeon shoot up next level.
My heart rate and blood pressure is shooting up.
I'm sure, because it is, just because we do it every day, people think that it's okay to do every day, but sometimes it can have dire consequences. And anybody who's operated enough has had their share of complications.
I can imagine. My heart rate went up when I was reading a book yesterday.
Yeah.
And it went up today also, thinking of this peanut, thinking of sitting awake. I think anyone who's thinking of sitting awake while getting their, like this big, a tennis ball hole drilled on the side of their head.
Yeah.
And talking to the doctor.
And the best part is they can see the actual surgery on a monitor in front of them. So they can even see what's going on inside the head. You just have to hope that they don't move their hand and come and grasp you and say, stop.
Wow. And on the other side, the patient will just hope that the doctor doesn't make a little snip, which will alter that guy's or girl's life forever.
Yeah.
And is there a difference between a male brain and a female brain?
I think the male brain, slightly larger volume, slightly millimeters. Statistically, they've studied it, across genders. And the female brain has slightly more
volume, because the man's head is bigger.
Interconnectivity. So that's why they say that females,
metaphorically and otherwise, the male head is bigger.
But if you look at it by and large, all these are only statistical difference in terms of cognition, judgment, ability to do what they want to do, thinking.
No, I don't mean which is like better or not. I just mean that is there any... No, obviously there's no superiority. What I mean is that visually, like when you're operating, is there any difference?
Visually, there's no difference in any brain.
Got it.
Whether it's a CEO of a Fortune 500 company or a dudwala. There's no difference at all physically when you look at it. Sometimes those patients who are chronic smokers,
like you need a lot of work to hit the brain,
have a diffuse atherosclerosis
right
in the blood vessels, and you can see instead of the blood vessels being, so there's a difference between a young brain and an old brain for sure. Physically, a young brain is bubbly, it's pristine,
you're rubbing your hands like Frankenstein.
It's so beautiful to look at, and
God bless those young kids.
It's like how a young baby is externally.
Yes.
So cherubic and cute and beautiful to look at. And as we age, imagine us looking at our own pictures when we were younger, and now when we look at them, and that happens to every organ system.
Right.
It takes the wear and tear and the brunt of being alive.
Got it.
So smokers do have a little more, you can see plaques within the vessel. So the carotid artery, if you look at it inside, in a younger person, it'll be nice and red, almost maroon. But in an older person, it'll be tainted with a yellow plaque inside. You'll see actually cholesterol floating within the blood vessel when you look at it. So very classic.
And there's some connection between the brain and menopause and brain fog. Can you tell us about that?
It's very real. People don't talk about it, and we keep making fun of. I have a lot of friends now who are in their perimenopausal age group, and I keep joking with them. But it's not a reproductive event. It's a neuroendocrine event.
Right.
When your estrogen drops, estrogen is very important in synaptic connectivity, in mood regulation, in sleep. So when those levels get a little altered, they show up physically. So we try to diss it as it being more of a psychological event, but it's grounded in biology.
And it's neurological. You're saying menopause is neurological also?
In some sense, it's neurological because there is a neuroendocrine influence on the brain. Hormones affect your brain, the way cortisol works, the way dopamine works.
And hormones affect your brain for sure.
Yeah.
Hormones affect everything.
Correct. So, but primarily the brain. So when we say people have brain fog, when we say they have mood disturbances, sleeping problems, all of that can be attributed to an alteration in biology.
Got it.
Now I have brownie points from all the girls.
Yeah. In 2013, there was this discovery about something called the glymphatic system, which deals with sleep and how the brain processes during sleep.
Correct.
Can you just tell us about that?
So interesting. Isn't it really amazing that even decades later, when we think we are done finding out stuff and there's nothing else to, people are even renaming new anatomical parts in the brain.
Wow.
But that's besides the point. When they discovered the glymphatic system, you have to think of your work in two modes. One is your wakeful mode, where it's alert, active, and when one is your restful mode, where it's maintaining your body. What happens is when we sleep, the space between the brain cells increases a little bit because of changes in oxygen and carbon dioxide. And that allows the clearance of metabolic waste products, allows CSF to flow in more
Cerebrospinal
fluid, flow in and eliminate all the toxins within the body. Good sleep is one of the strongest proponents to a healthy brain. And it allows for all the metabolic waste to be cleared out.
So the glymphatic system is basically like a cleaning system.
It's a cleaning system. So the brain is producing about 400-500 of new cerebrospinal fluid every day.
400-500
ml.
Yeah, like half a liter of cerebrospinal fluid the brain is producing every day.
And then it gets absorbed by the brain itself into the venous system and then gets circulated from the venous system into the heart and then into the blood.
And what about the old fluid? Just
that gets absorbed.
Goes in.
Gets absorbed. It also gets used by the brain in all its function. And that again is just phenomenal.
So there's a whole sewage plant system going on in your head also.
Yeah.
Which is this good fluid is being produced and bathed in your head and your body.
Right.
And the bad stuff has to be washed out.
Correct.
How is it washed out?
It gets absorbed by what is called as the arachnoid granulations that
gets
cover
absorbed
the surface
again
of the
also.
brain and then goes into the venous system and then goes into the heart. And then the heart does the filtration through the lung and then fresh blood is recirculated through that.
Wow. And that's what happens when you sleep.
That's what happens when you sleep. Yeah.
Wow. It's the cleaning. It's your house cleaning.
Yeah.
Basically. Someone is coming in and scrubbing your house with Dettol and cleaning it nicely and killing the mosquitoes.
Urban clap for the brain.
Urban clap, yes. Got it. Wow. 20 years ago, you were stimulated, but it was limited. You could watch TV at night. You didn't have Netflix, so how much could you watch at night of Doordarshan?
Yeah.
Not much. And you had to read a book. But now we've reached another level of stimulation. So when you have overstimulation plus this massive emphasis on productivity, we all want to be more productive. We don't think we're useful if we're not productive. We're all in the rat race. Because sleep is the main thing that we can cut down on. How does that really affect the brain, and what do you see as a neurosurgeon?
So a lot of people say I'm absolutely fine with 4 to 5 hours of sleep. But I think they're almost always wrong. Because what that does, and now there's enough data to tell us that healthy young adults need about 7 to 8 hours. What it does, inadequate sleep, and there's data to tell you that, is that it lowers your perception of impairment. So you think you're fine. Because it's impairing the prefrontal cortex, which is the area that gives you some amount of insight and judgment into your own life. It's like an alcoholic, fine. He'll tell you, I'm okay, even though I'm fine, no problem. You see, and he'll say, okay, I'm going to drive now.
Watch me walk on the line. Whoops.
Yeah. That kind of. So it's the exact same thing that alcohol does. It lowers your perception of impairment. So the thing that is telling you that you're not okay itself is not okay.
The policeman is sleeping.
Yes. And what happens is that it increases oxidative stress in the brain. It doesn't allow the brain to recuperate the way it should. And that eventually, the thing about the brain is that it's very resilient. So it doesn't rebel immediately. It sustains impact, remains quiet, and then one fine day it gives way.
I've had enough.
That kind of thing. So it's like a leak in your ceiling. You'll see it becoming wet over time. And then little puppery will fall off. And then finally the thing.
I remember reading that alcohol kills brain cells. Is that really true or is that just a myth?
Alcohol is a neurotoxin.
Really?
100%.
It's a neurotoxin.
It's a neurotoxin. So
that's why it gets you high.
Yeah. It's a toxin. Like caffeine, for example, is a stimulant. It's not a toxin. It begins to, again, work on a cellular level, and it begins to affect parts of the brain that are responsible for planning, responsible for judgment, responsible for decision making. It destabilizes the cell membrane and
in the brain.
Prolong in the brain. And it has a dose effect. So if you binge drink, it's much worse than if you take a small drink on a regular basis. Because again, the body has an ability to wash it out. But if you are shocking the brain with it, then that damage is far more permanent. The data is switching its sides, because once upon a time, moderate amount of alcohol was considered good for longevity and for the heart
and to relax.
And there were proponents of everybody in Europe thriving on red wine, white wine. But now there's enough data to tell us that the biologically safe limit of alcohol is 0. So if I look at a scan, the first question I can ask someone is, how much do you drink?
Really?
Because the brain shrinks. The brain atrophies, the brain much earlier than what it would in the normal process of aging. Someone who's 50-year-old will have a MRI of an 80-year-old.
If they're
drinking chronically, let's say if they drink every day, or they're binge drinking over the weekends. A lot of the times,
even binge drinking over the weekends, you can see that on an MRI.
You can see that. I mean, you will not be able to say that, oh, this is because you've been binge drinking, but the amount of atrophy that a brain shows on a scan is definitely related to it. It keeps killing cells, right? It keeps taking away the neurons, unless you're doing something dramatically active to enhance your neurogenesis. Right. But the ratio is phenomenally skewed. They'll just knock off neurons from your functioning neurons from your
So binge
system.
drinking does kill your brain cells.
100%.
So I wonder about cannabis and smoking also, and again, not from a moralistic point of view, obviously, because most people associate smoking with lungs and the heart.
Yeah, but
what does smoking do for the brain?
So it causes a vascular decline. So what happens is that smoking causes significant atherosclerosis of the blood vessels. So it damages blood vessels and damages the blood flowing to the brain. And when
it reduces the blood flow to the brain.
Yes, it reduces the blood flow to the brain, increases the oxidative stress of the brain, increases the amount of energy that the brain requires to get that amount of blood to the brain. So if you have a pipe that's this big and the amount of blood flowing through it, smoking is going to, make it this much.
Got it.
Because all that deposits along the blood vessels. And that causes, again, a state of chronic inflammation.
Let's just pause. Subscribing here isn't just about supporting our channel. It's about choosing what kind of thinking you want around you regularly. So if that resonates, you know what to do. Talking about spine surgeries, Doc, as a neurosurgeon, you also operate along with the brain on the whole spine.
Yes.
Cervical cord compression, neck, you operate on the neck as well. What do you see today that has changed in people? Because, we're on our phones a lot and all. I just want to understand, what is the lifestyle implication and how does it end up with you?
So we are seeing younger and younger people with more problems. Younger people with neck pain, with headaches, with back pain. And that's because of poor posture, weak muscles. Everyone's on their phone 24/7. It's like, imagine you have your head roughly weighs about 4-5 kilos. And then you put it at an incline of, let's say, 20-30 degrees. That's equivalent to a 35-40 kilo weight on your head. So over time, that causes wear and tear of the muscles. The disc degenerates a little bit. The ligaments start to wither. And then when the disc prolapses, it pinches on the nerve, and which is why you have tingling, numbness in the arms, pain in the back of the neck going to the head, pain in the shoulders. So a lot has to do with the lifestyle. For example, gym goers, large, big, bulky guy comes to me in the office and he's shriveled down to a little bit of a baby because of the pain he is in. And when you look at this guy wearing a tight shirt and you think of him as a macho guy, but he's like weeping in front of you, saying that I can't just bear this pain. And he's gone and tried something really macho in the gym, lifted something that his body is not allowing him to do, and has a disc prolapse causing severe compression. Similarly, young children. Now we are seeing children in their early teens who are on their phone the whole day. They keep coming to you.
For surgery?
Not for surgery, thankfully, because most of these things can be corrected with timely physiotherapy. But yes, if it's really bad, if the posture goes really bad, and if there's a disc prolapse that's not getting better with physiotherapy, with medication, then they need surgery. It's called a text neck syndrome. So people are on their phones all the time. And then I have seen several teenagers with disc prolapses because of them just simply being in bed on their phone all the time.
If someone wanted to make one simple change for their neck and spine today, what would it be?
People are getting a little attuned to it. They're doing standing desks. They're having their screen at eye level, which I think is the most important thing to do. If there's one advice you could give anybody to prevent strain on the neck, is to keep your screen at eye level. If you're working on the computer, because you may be able to tell someone to sit up, they'll do that for about 4-5 minutes. And then the tendency, but if you change your environment to adapt to your posture, rather than changing your posture to adapt to your environment, you'll be forced to. I tell people to sit up as if, someone's pulling them up from the vertex of their head, but it doesn't work for a long term basis.
It works for a few minutes.
Let's say if you have a screen at this level, then it will help. And I would recommend anybody not to sit for more than 20 to 30 minutes. Because you have to understand that the spine is...
Stand up.
Yeah, spine is not just a... so whenever I give a talk, and if it's an hour-long talk, midway I take everybody to... I force everybody to give me a standing ovation in the middle of the
Makes
talk.
sense.
So I can get away with it. But it's also vascular. It's also neurological. It's not only musculoskeletal. You have to move around to be able to continue circulation through your body, and remaining stagnant beyond 30 minutes, max 45 minutes. There's no profession in the world that allows you to not get up and stand every 45 minutes.
Tell us exactly what happens when you sit for long.
It takes the spine is able to take a certain degree of load, and beyond a certain time, the pressure in the disc increases because of gravity, because of the posture, because of the position it's in. And what happens is that then that disc irritates the nerve a little bit. That nerve pushes the muscle to go into spasm, and then you have a chronic inflamed state of the muscle all the time. And then you're not giving it enough time to recover. Even for patients who we do surgery on, we tell them, boss, you have to start moving within 1 hour of surgery. We get all spine patients to walk within a couple of hours of surgery, unless it's a big operation or they're in severe pain.
Spine was made for movement.
Medicine is movement. Movement is medicine. If you are able to incorporate movement in your life constantly, I don't think you will age as fast as if you weren't able to do so. So any amount of, you don't have to do, let's say, 15,000 steps a day. Even 7,000-8,000 steps a day is enough, but you do it consistently. Some amount of moderate exercise, some amount of walking. For example, I never use the elevator in my hospital. Never, maybe inappropriate, but almost never.
Me too.
So that's the best thing. I mean, find ways in your daily life to be able to circumvent giving it a special time. So there's enough data to say that those who go to the gym for an hour and exercise and then rest of the time are doing a desk job through the day are actually not benefiting themselves as someone who doesn't go to the gym but is getting up and doing, let's say, 10 squats an hour. That's it, something like that, or getting up and walking. And post meals, especially post meals, is when glucose tends to accumulate in the tissue. So to get it out of the tissue, you have to move to prevent. So even if some people just recommend doing calf raises, but if you take a 10-minute walk post dinner, it's also a good time to bond with the family. It's also a good time to take care of your metabolic health. So what I do is I time my lunch in such a way that after lunch I can quickly do a quick round of the patients that I haven't seen in the morning. So that way I can eliminate some of the side effects of sugar.
And what are early signs that your neck is going to be causing you neurological problems?
Neck pain that goes up to the back of the head, stiffness in the shoulders, some tingling or numbness in the arms, you constantly telling somebody to massage your neck for you or press it. Those are the common symptoms that, because you have to understand that no degree of pain should be considered normal for anybody. I often tell people that you should consider symptoms as a gift. Your body is telling you that there is something wrong with a particular organ system or multiple organ systems. And if you don't acknowledge that, it's going to eventually cause you to pay a bigger price.
Right. Everybody talks about dopamine detox. It's a trending topic, which is basically, getting off the screen, 48-hour phone-free weekends, retreats. Does that work?
So I think the term dopamine detox itself is a misnomer because dopamine is not a toxin. It's a neurotransmitter. But I think dopamine works by activating the reward system of the brain, right?
They call it a dopamine hit.
Right. So whenever you do something that gives you joy, there's dopamine that's increasing, but at the same time, it can have some harmful effects. So what you're doing by using the term dopamine detox is you're just trying and reducing the sensitivity. Because if your body is constantly getting all that dopamine, it's not going to respond in the same way that it does.
Right.
If it doesn't get it. But I personally don't think that you can get the benefit of being 2 days away from your phone when your entire life eventually revolves around it. So again, what the brain really thrives on is small, consistent changes. So if you can be off it 1 hour before you sleep, not be on it 1 hour before you wake up, and have a 2 or 3 hour window in the day where you're not at it, it's great for me because when I operate for 3-4 hours, I'm away from it. So those things, I think, in small, consistent ways will eventually help.
Right.
But staying away from it for 2 days and then binging it, again, it's like alcohol, like staying away from Monday to Friday and then Saturday, Sunday going crazy is not solving the problem.
Is AI making us dumber by, we're outsourcing some thinking tasks?
I think we've seen that happen, right? Our arithmetic has been taken away by calculators. Our spatial recognition is taken away by the GPS system. We are outsourcing writing to AI now. Even an email, someone else will write for you. So obviously you're outsourcing parts of your brain which were used to build on resilience, to build on cognition, to build what we want is to recruit more and more neurons in a certain activity. And we are, in some sense, giving away that.
It's like I want to do all these exercises, but I'm giving away some of the exercises. I have to do exercises for my core and my back, but I'm giving away my core exercises. But I need those core exercises.
Yeah. So eventually, we have to find a way in which to use it subtly, but not. I think be its master and not its slave would be a right way to say it.
I can feel it though. Like
Of course, we can't remember any phone numbers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Beyond 4-5 phone numbers, now you can't remember them.
Yeah.
Initially, we used to remember. I remember when I worked as a resident, every patient had a hospital number,
Really.
like a 6-digit hospital number, and we used to require to use it to fill out various forms. And
Right.
there were 30 patients in the ward, and I could remember all those hospital numbers of these patients.
Impossible today.
And today's day and age, it's very difficult to do that. So obviously, you are allowing some part of your brain to become redundant when it can be harnessed to function exponentially well.
Yeah. You can feel laziness. I can feel the laziness in my head versus
Because you have a tool in
Yeah.
front of you. Like, for example, even when people talk about cooking, the entire process of getting ingredients together, mixing them, cutting them,
chopping the recipes.
All of
Someone
that-
is with you doing it
all of that, as opposed to ordering something from Swiggy,
and sitting down the whole time.
it's not. So eventually it will show up. Now, there's not enough data, but some data to tell us that now the new generation of children, they've done morphometric analysis of their skull, and the eye sockets become a little wider by a couple of micromillimeters compared to what it was a few decades ago, because of the sensory input overload.
You just have a massive thumb.
Yeah, so
swiping will
we are
become
going to
like
start.
Ape-like humanoids.
So I think it's going to go a full cycle, and
Yeah.
we're going to start looking like monkeys again.
Our
Hunched forward.
feet will,
Yeah.
hands will reach the floor again. Yes, and some solid muscles here we'll need.
It'll be interesting to do this podcast again after 30 years and
Yes.
see how much of what we've discussed is.
It'll be the AI thing will definitely. I mean, what will probably happen then is that you will have to do mental exercises. So children today who have used AI all the time, so they have brain rot. The real version of brain rot will probably have to do regular exercises as adults.
Yeah.
The same as I think that's what it'll be like. The same as because we sit the whole day. If we were in the farm, we didn't have to do core exercises
Yeah.
all that stuff because you're busy the whole day, active the whole day.
Yeah, laborers, they don't need anything
Because today we
extra.
sit the whole day, so you have to keep doing exercises. What is exercising? It's a new concept. You didn't have to exercise 100 years ago because you were active the whole day.
Yeah.
So you'll have to do brain exercises. Give me
Yeah.
20 minutes. I need to go out and I don't know,
Exercise,
solve a
man.
Rubik's Cube or whatever it is. And then
Yeah,
come
but
back.
again, these short-term hacks may not really work. We'll have to incorporate it in a
Massive way because it's your
daily
brain.
lifestyle. Yeah.
So talking about that, what is neuroplasticity? Because that's what it comes to. Like,
So
how do you improve your brain?
So neuroplasticity is the ability for the brain to adapt to the constantly changing environment, and to be able to recruit more and more function. Certain supposedly damaged parts of the brain can renew similar function by recruiting more neurons around it. So
Regenerate.
Let's say in children, when we do epilepsy surgery, we disconnect one hemisphere from another, and that results in a child being completely paralyzed on one side of the body. But over a period of 6 months to a year, most of these children can regain complete function of the hand and leg, because there are surrounding neurons that are being trained to take over that function.
And so talking about neuroplasticity, people say at 50, learn a new instrument, learn how to sing, learn a language. How practically useful is all that stuff?
Very useful. That also delays the onset of Alzheimer's. Proven that it's harder than if you do it in your early teens or as a child, because the adaptability of neurons is much more at that age. But when you do that, again, you're recruiting new brain cells to function more and more. And it involves a multitude of areas of the brain that are involved in learning a new skill, like a musical instrument. So all those areas start beginning to get active that are not used at all. You don't use these things on a daily basis.
So what would you recommend if someone had some time, 50, 60-year-old person, they have a little bit of, time during the week and they want to do something to make their brain better, to be more resilient towards aging. What would be the top 1 or 2 things that you recommend that they learn?
Ballroom dancing.
Because it's physical thing and all.
It's great. Ballroom dancing has been shown in studies to reduce the symptoms of Parkinson's and delay the onset of Alzheimer's, because there involves a little bit of coordination, it involves a little bit of activity, it involves energy, it involves exercise.
And like, what about mahjong, bridge? These are the things that are doing now.
Also
They're
good.
sedentary.
Also good. Also, it's better than doing that than solving some brain quizzes on your iPad.
Right.
Those again have a very transient effect.
And no social element.
No social engagement. Here, there's a great deal of social engagement, and that is very important for the brain.
You have this fantastic book that I spent time yesterday reading called Bheja Fry, which is the name of the first movie that I produced also, Bheja Fry 2. And it's I really loved it. It was very interesting, heartfelt stories. So I'm just going to quote from this book. I'd written down something, if you permit me. This is you describing the brain while you're operating someone. You're describing someone's real brain. The brain is a variant shade of beige pink. The nerves a diverse spectrum from white to yellow. And the corridors to access these tumors keep changing, making it a wondrous journey into enthralling nooks and crannies. There is a new treasure to be excavated every day. That is so visual and not so scary, because you're really describing it as a beautiful, like a Himalayan, mountain range kind of that you're looking at from the top. Can you tell us whose brain this is and what is this story about, Doc?
So the brain, maybe I should call you for a book reading. You read it out so well.
Yeah, sure. I would love to do that, yes.
The thing is, the brain itself is so majestic to look at and wondrous that every day you have a different landscape you are traversing. So it's like going on a holiday, actually, every single day.
For you?
For me.
Not for me.
And you're looking at that through the microscope, which enhances the...
Oh, through micro... Not a direct view.
No.
Oh,
you're looking at it, which is magnified, it's illuminated. I'll show you a couple of videos on my screen, on my laptop. But it's a funny story, because this is a guy who had a tumor that was pressing against his brain stem and in the region of the trigeminal nerve. And he had a really funny symptom. He started laughing at things that were not meant to be laughed at. So his wife first noticed that he started laughing at his brother's funeral, started cracking some jokes, almost obscene.
Wow.
And they had to silence him. And he thought there's really nothing. When he came to me, why are people making such a big deal about me cracking a few jokes? What's there if we can't look at death with a little bit of humor? And then I remember the wife telling me that the cat made a mess on his carpet, and he picked it up to smell it a little bit, and it doesn't taste that good. So that kind of, just even for a Parsi, that amount of humor is considered
pushing it.
A little obnoxious. So they went to a physician and who astutely got a scan done, and an MRI showed this tumor that's compressing this part of the brain. And there is a circuit in the brain that controls what is called as pathological laughter. And there's an inverse entity also, which is called as pathological crying. Basically, we went inside his head, and you have to drill a little bit of bone to get to that location. So we were able to excavate this whole beautiful gold mine, remove the tumor, free the compression from the brain stem, and he was absolutely okay. And I remember still, while they were closing the wound, I asked my colleague who's assisting me, do you think he'll get any better as far as his humor is concerned? And he told me he had such a great sense of humor. Now you're only going to screw it up for him. It's going to become boring again. And then the next day, how do you usually, when a patient recovers from neurosurgery, you check for hand and leg function, you check for cognition. How do you check for... So his wife said that he's not behaving as obnoxious as he was behaving before surgery. And then he said, hey, listen, I want to tell you a joke.
The patient
says, he says, how many neurosurgeons does it take to change a light bulb? You know, those light bulb jokes. So I said, I don't know, tell me. He says, 1, for the neurosurgeon to hold the bulb in place and the entire world to revolve around him. So I thought we restored him a little bit.
Not a bad joke. Yeah.
Not a bad joke.
Yeah.
So, but that's the reputation that we have, right? That we are this pompous set of arrogant asses who think that we are on top of the medical totem pole. But we won't argue we won't argue with others.
Right. You had another story about amazing story about a 95-year-old man whose entire family were happy that he died peacefully, but he had other plans.
Yeah, so the thing about operating on the elderly is that there's very conflicted views for the patient themselves and the family. And there's no right answer to it. This guy came to us slightly disoriented, almost comatose, with a paralysis on one side of the body because he had a collection of blood on the opposite side, what we call as a chronic subdural hematoma. And in some conditions where there's a hemorrhage inside the brain, you just tell the patient that don't do anything, or tell the family don't do anything, just let him go peacefully. This is the best thing. Even if he survives, he's going to be probably vegetative.
Especially at an older age.
Especially at an older age, because again, an aging brain takes longer to recover than young. But this particular kind of clot, all it needed was a little bit of a hole and drain that clot, and I was certain that he would improve. But the family was everywhere abroad. And they said, now he's 95, he's lived his life, just let him go peacefully, don't do anything heroic.
They were like, oh God, this doctor wants to operate.
Yeah, now again, this gives a wrong sense when doctors, I usually never force patients to have surgery unless I'm 100% convinced that this is going to be life-altering. And sometimes family may begin to feel that, oh, he's in for the money, just why don't you respect? But we don't do anything without consent. Nonetheless, so they all got together on a conference call and decided that, okay, just go ahead with the operation. And we did the operation awake because he had some problems with having general anesthesia. And the moment we drilled a hole and drained that blood, his consciousness improved at that very minute. And his paralyzed side started moving. Actually, during the operation, when he lifted his hand himself, he said, oh, wow, this is a miracle.
Wow.
And he was so delighted because he was absolutely active till one day ago, doing everything, living an independent life, going to a laughter club, playing some tennis, like baby tennis.
But tennis?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was fully functional. So why would you deprive someone whose
age wasn't like a good indicator?
Correct. Right? And then the family was really thankful that we went ahead and did this. And he calls me every single year on the date of his operation, telling me today is my 3rd birthday, today is my 4th birthday. And he's 99 now.
Wow.
And he says on the 100th birthday, I'm going to have a party. Amazing. I mean, these are stories of grit, of gumption and grace at the same time that people live their lives with. And I feel that the book probably gives others also suffering from similar illnesses some form of hope or an inspiration to look up to these patients on how to be able to go through their story if, God forbid, they have such an affliction.
Amazing. Wow. I read in your book about a dog that detects cancer, a Labrador that detected cancer. Can you tell us about that story?
Dogs can detect cancer. It's called a lab test.
Right, it's a lab test. Yes.
But it's an amazing story of a lady whose dog kept sniffing at her breast. And she was wondering that he's suddenly become horny. He's been okay all this while. And then she didn't pay much heed to it until it became quite aggressive. And when she felt for a lump, she couldn't actually feel anything. She went to her doctor who asked for a mammogram, and mammogram showed a tumor in the breast.
Wow.
And they had to operate on it and excise it. And she's been now cancer-free for the last 15 years. But it just goes to show.
So the dog could smell the tumor.
Dogs can smell. Dogs were used.
I've heard.
To suss out COVID. Recently, someone told me that in America, dogs are used in an outpatient clinic to identify which patients require prior emergency treatment or need to be seen first by the physician. They can detect a seizure a couple of minutes before it actually happens. So
dogs can smell cancer.
They have an amazing sense of an extra sensory perception. So obviously any kind of abnormality in the body is giving out a signal which at our level we are not able to perceive, and we require technology and we require. So imagine if we were able to heighten our own sensitivities. I'm sure certain yogis and certain people with certain spiritual powers are able to do this, right? People who feel your pulse and tell you what problem you have. There's definitely a science to this. And again, these are sciences that we are still exploring and still identifying. And there's a long way to go. So it's amazing how animals have, and there again, technology is trying to build e-noses or dog noses that can sniff out.
So where in the world, because I've read that somewhere in the world they have dogs to detect cancer.
I'm sure they must be having it.
Yeah. You have this amazing and hilarious story about a man who started complaining about his wife's food, but at the same time kept telling her how much he loves her, which he had never done before.
Yeah, this is a very funny Gujarati couple that this guy loved to eat and she loved to feed him. And all these years he was really happy, and suddenly he started complaining that your food is not tasting what it used to. And she was getting a little irritated with him. Little did he realize that he was losing smell. And smell and taste are interconnected. And then again, someone intelligent ordered for an MRI scan of the brain. And it showed a large tumor.
But just from not being
Just
able
from
to smell
smell.
the food,
Yeah.
they could order a MRI of the brain.
Yeah. Because there's a dysfunction with the olfactory nerve, right? If there's a dysfunction with the olfactory nerve, you have to ideally trace it to its origin.
So he couldn't smell at all.
He had drastically reduced his smell
Because in
function.
COVID, I couldn't smell
Yeah.
during COVID also.
Yeah, no, but this was recent.
Got it.
And then he also started, over gesticulating to his wife how much he loved her, because the tumor was growing from the olfactory groove or the olfactory nerve and pressing against his frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe, like we discussed, is responsible for behaviour, is responsible for personality, emotional regulation. And because of that pressure, all that was getting dysregulated. And she said, he's never told me I love you in all these years of our life together. And suddenly now every day he's telling me he loves me. But at the same time, he's telling me my food doesn't taste good. So the bottom line is that he had this big laddu, the size of a cricket ball, sitting right in front of inside his head. And we went ahead and made a big incision, pulled the flap down, made a craniotomy, removed this whole tumor. And all that reduced the swelling, dissected it off beautifully, the olfactory nerve. And 3 to 6 months later, he regained 80% of his smell function. And began to love the taste of his wife's food.
But does he still compliment her as much?
And now she's upset that the downside of it is he doesn't say I love you anymore.
Got it. A brain tumor caused a man to gain 20 kgs in 6 months. How did you find out and how did this happen?
So the brain regulates hormones, and the central axis of the hormones is the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus. So one patient was just beginning to eat more and more. And his wife was wondering what the hell is going on. He's just like putting on weight, but no other symptom, right? Just increased appetite dramatically, out of proportion to what they've ever seen before. And luckily someone got a scan done and it showed a tumor sitting right in the area that abuts the hypothalamus. And that's the center that regulates food intake, even to some extent respiration, sleep, all of those things, and was pressing against it. So it was dysregulating the axis. And it was a tumor called a craniopharyngioma, which is a difficult tumor to remove because it's stuck to very, very important and crucial structures of the brain. But we removed it in a beautiful fashion, and he lost all his weight back within another 6 months. So it's just identifying hormonal dysfunction and not attributing it to medical causes, not attributing it to just odd behavior, but structurally imaging the brain to another thing that can do this is a symptom called Cushing's disease, where your body produces excess cortisol, and the tumors hardly sometimes 7-8 millimeters in size that can cause someone to gain 20-30 kilos, become dark in their skin, cause pigmentation, cause bruising, and you can cure them completely by going through the nose and removing these tumors and resetting their hormonal axis. And they make dramatic recoveries. But the key is in being able to diagnose these conditions properly.
No more drilling through the head.
So some of these tumors you can remove from the nose.
Do you think in the long term all tumors will be through keyhole
No,
surgery?
no.
Dr. Mazda Turel, you have seen so many patients' brains and done all these life-saving surgeries. How has that impacted your personal life? Like, what changes have you made in your life when you have seen the effects of bad habits in people's brains?
I think I don't take life too seriously anymore, because I understand that life is fragile. And the book talks about what happens to all of us when we're busy making other plans. And suddenly one day you get this diagnosis and then you don't know what to do. So I take everything with a pinch of salt. I don't take myself seriously either. And I think that's the way I personally believe to live your life, is to live it lightly without considering yourself to be too important or any situation around you.
Anything can happen.
Anything
You
can
think
happen.
you're hot shit, but do you love what you do?
Of course. I mean, I wouldn't think of doing anything else. The gratification that comes from some of the work that we do, where people bump into you at random places and say, "Doctor, you won't remember me, but you saved my mother's life." There are so many stories sometimes where we even let patients go. Let's say if someone has a massive hemorrhage and the family wants to do everything and you tell them don't do anything, it's just going to drain you. At that time, they may feel that it's the wrong decision, but they'll come back to you 2 weeks later and say, "Thank you for guiding us to do the right thing." There are patients who come to us with stage 4 brain cancer. I remember this lady who was a teacher and she just wanted to continue to teach, though people had told her that if you get it removed and have radiation and chemo, you're not going to live for more than a couple of years. We went ahead and did the operation. And though she lived for 2.5, 3 years, after the 3 months of surgery, she went back to teaching and she did every single thing that she wanted to do. And for someone who doesn't have long to live, 2 years is a lifetime. So it's very important for us to understand that we are not God. We cannot determine how long someone has to live, but we can help them live with the love and respect and the compassion that they want to live their lives with. And I think that's the most satisfying thing of what we do. We're able to provide meaning and respect to people who want to live their lives in a certain way. And of course, I'm not absolving myself from the potential harm that can come from also what we do. And we've had complications that can go the other way around as well. And there might be people who might be speaking ill of us and wishing that they never had the operation. But as long as we are doing more good and the intention is to help, I think that allows you to negate the side effects.
Right. And what, like you just said, you're saving so many people's lives, but sometimes things happen beyond what you can control and what you think. Can you give us a story about that?
So there was a 27-year-old guy with a tumor inside his spinal cord.
Right.
Since you like analogies, imagine a mithai roll with a silver foil around it. The entire tumor was the mithai roll and the silver foil was what had become of the spinal cord.
Whoa.
When the entire mithai roll should be the spinal cord.
So could he walk?
So he could walk with a little bit of gait disturbance, but he could walk. He had a little bit of erectile dysfunction. He had some urinary incontinence because all those functions are governed by spinal cord.
But he was a time bomb.
He was a time bomb. He would get worse. And we went in for surgery, and we do this operation with what we call as intraoperative neuromonitoring. So we connect the hand and leg to computers and electrodes, and that tells us that if you're causing any harm, those signals will drop. But when we connected him to all these monitors, we got no signals. There was a flat line. Meaning the electrode was not, the spinal cord was pushed to its edge. It was not giving out the signal that the machine can pick up. So the debate was to patients under anesthesia. Debate was whether to go ahead with an operation. Are you going to make him worse if you do this without the guidance that you're used to? The anesthetist said, listen, just abandon the operation because your first principle is do no harm. My assistant said that let him develop symptoms, and then when he develops symptoms, he didn't want to be there for a 10-hour operation. This is a proposedly 10-hour operation. The relatives said that we went ahead and asked the relatives, listen, this is the situation we're not getting. They said that, why are you asking us? You're the doctor. You should decide what to do. So that's the thing about medicine, right? You have to be able to take a decision at the spur of the moment, and that decision can impact not only your life, but someone else's life for eternity. So it's not only about the technical ability of doing things, but whether what you're doing is right or wrong. Nonetheless, we went ahead and opened up the spine. We didn't get any signals. We removed the tumor beautifully. It took about 10 hours to do it. Continuous, non-stop. Separating it from every strand of the spinal cord and taking it out. Just imagine delivering a hot dog, size of a full-blown New York hot dog in one piece. And we closed. And what do you think happened to him after the operation?
I hope he was fine.
Just completely paralyzed. And
from neck down?
No, leg down. So the spinal tumor was in the thoracic level. So the hands were spared, not cervical, thoracic. So leg down, no bowel bladder function.
Right.
Got discharged 1 week later with zero movement in a wheelchair. Had come in more or less walking. So like they say, most things will be okay, but not everything. Sometimes you pick up a fight and you lose. And sometimes the only thing to do is to let go. But I stayed with the family. I didn't give up because I knew that technically there was no damage done to the spinal cord. And 2-3 weeks later, he started walking with a walker. He started getting some leg movement back, just a flicker. And then over a couple of months, actually forgot about him until 3 months later, he sent me a video of him having climbed 20 floors and was running on his terrace.
What?
So, in hindsight, it was the best decision to have made. But I think my balding head is because of these cases that don't go as we expect them to go. And I think it's also important to talk about failures rather than just harping about your success. Initially, when I used to write a column, I used to write a lot about failures. And then I suddenly realized that the patients I'm getting in the outpatient clinic are dropping. This guy is a really bad doctor. But
you have to balance it. I know what you mean.
So,
but tell me, in this case, doc, like you said, the family said it's up to you. Your anesthesiologist or your colleagues were like, 10 hour kyon karne ka hai, chhod do. And I mean, on a common sense level, I would say, yeah, like you said, his symptoms are low.
Yeah.
It's so complicated. He's not getting any feeling. You're not getting any electrical sensations or whatever from his extremities. Why do it now? What made you take that call? Because you took that call.
Because eventually it had to be done, right? And the best chance of doing it was now.
Sooner
because once he's once he's physically damaged by the tumor, the chance of him recovering function is going to be much less. Because then it's not only pressure related function, it's damage related function.
And the atrophy is very quick.
Yeah.
If you're like,
Yeah.
after thousands of surgeries, what genuinely humbles you about the brain?
I think that something so soft and so delicate can encompass something so vast and so mysterious, and that you're seeing on a daily basis, and it governs all of humanity, all of everything that makes someone who they are, I think is a constant amazement. And that real contradiction of its physical appearance versus what it can do is magnetic.
Amazing. And lastly, we've discussed so many things about the brain. Habit, substances, stress, sleep. If you had to bet on one thing that would be the most important thing 20 years from today still, what would it be?
I think sleep, probably, because technology will be able to enhance several other things, but biology will still have the forefront.
It's kind of the final frontier in a way.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.